shadows stay. My heart grew cold, my spirit weak, but deep inside I heard you speak. You are the one who leads me home. No longer lost, I'm not alone.
Welcome to this week's broadcast of The Drip Line, Healing for Your Soul. It is my hope that this week's message will cause you to pause and consider your life's trajectory. I hope this message will help you be more self-aware and empower you to make better life decisions, touching your heart and enabling you to love and feel better. So I ask, why do we do the things that we do? Why do we let our dreams disintegrate? How do we get off track? How do we get derailed and lose track of our true desires? And what do we use to substitute them? Let me try to answer that. There are actually many reasons, but the one reason I will focus on in today's broadcast is the carelessness and lack of morality in society. Sex, bad sex, wrong sex, premarital sex, abusive sex, misused sex, controlling sex, corporate sex, incestuous sex, sex for money and favor sex, manipulative sex, frivolous sex, reckless sex, sex trafficking sex, and religious ritual sex can be the problem. Yes, sex is an issue. Now, being a high school teacher and also being around a lot of young adults, I can truly say society is more diligent to carelessness than to being moral, successful, and or prepared for a prosperous future. The pleasures in life, the frivolous distractions carry us away into paths of self-destruction, impoverishment, cycles of repeated failures because we give more value to satisfying fleshly desires than to being honorable, self-controlled, disciplined, and responsible. We serve our dysfunction rather than fight it. We serve our weaknesses rather than fighting them, rather than developing character and strength. Satisfying that urge to get high, satisfying that urge to get busy with that boy or girl, man or woman, and are satisfying that desire to make money quick without regard to legality, quality, or morality of the means is just too commonplace these days. They are signs of weakness. They are signs of a mind that does not know how to navigate through life's challenges without checking out, acting out, or hiding out. Now, we may say that's not the majority of people in the world. That's not how the majority of people act. But I can confidently say that it is very prevalent and spreading like wildfire. Yes, our carelessness, our recklessness, and our lack of morality and valuing what is right is a problem. And the worst part and biggest mistake that we can make is to use sex as a replacement for real, true intimacy and real love. Yes, sex is the focus of this podcast. We err in thinking sexual intimacy or activity heals the brokenness inside. And the most tragic of all is when a baby is born, a so-called byproduct of our misguided behavior and mentality. I can tell you, if a person is self-medicating, trying to get rich quick by scheming and scamming, or involving themselves in frivolous sexual relationships or behavior, making a baby, or destroying another person's sense of self-worth is almost meaningless to them. Too many times I hear about women not using protection, men not using protection because it's just too inconvenient or uncomfortable, or that a woman thinks that, well, I want to keep him, so I'll do it his way. But then the baby comes. Making a baby by accident is no big deal to some. But making a baby by accident is a huge deal, and it's infuriating to me. It is simply outrageous that whether old or young, our actions and immaturity, or in our own mindlessness, we do not care enough about bringing a child into our micro world of mess. Yes, not just the world in general, because people say, how can you bring a baby into the world? But how can you bring a baby into a dysfunctional life? It's a mess. Consider your own little world where chaos, mayhem, disorder, financial duress, relational instability, social immaturity, and irresponsibility abound. Consider this, and I'm talking to both sexes, but mostly to women who seem to carry most of the burden when a baby is involved. I'm going to go down the list of questions that essentially point to the errors and activities that set us up for disappointment, fear, and failure in life. Now, this may seem harsh, but it needs to be addressed. Why are teenagers engaging in adult behavior when they do not have the maturity to handle the consequences? That's question 1. 2, why is society so accepting of premarital sex? 3, why do parents allow their children to have live-in boyfriends and girlfriends? And why do parents allow their own live-in boyfriends or girlfriends that they've only known for a short time into their own space, when children especially are involved? Why do parents do drugs with their children? Why do men feel the need to make so many babies and not wear protection? Why do women allow these men to not protect themselves during sex? Why don't women use their own form of protection? Why do women think they have to have sex to be gratified, satisfied, and validated and accepted by a man? Why do women use babies as weapons when the man does not comply with your desires? Why do women still think having a baby will keep a man? Why do men fail to support their children and maintain relationships with them despite the relational conflicts? Why are teens engaging in sexual activities inside their own schools and parking lots and school bathrooms? Why are so many girls preferring other girls over boys, and why are boys preferring boys over girls? Don't deem this so controversial. I'm keeping it real. Why are moms treating their sons like husbands? Why are moms making their older kids the parents of their younger siblings? Why are so many children being physically and emotionally abused by either parent? Why is drug and alcohol use among everyone so prevalent? Why don't we care about the quality of life of a child before we bring one into the world? Why do we fantasize that having a child can make everything right? And why do the children suffer so much and grow into angry, bitter, emotionally dysfunctional people? And the last question, why are we so careless with the lives of others that we displace our dysfunction on them? Now, I am not going to do any deep character analysis today, nor am I going to address or answer each of these questions I pose. Most are reflective anyway. Plus, that could take forever and a day to answer all of them. But what I am going to do is provide a solution. One word: stop. Just stop. Stop the madness. Stop the bleeding. Stop adding to your own sorrows by doing all the things that cause you problems, and stop doing things that only provide temporary relief. We've all been guilty. I've been there. I've been guilty. But it's time for anyone listening to look in the mirror and say, I can do this the right way. I can do this in a better way. I can do this the best way. I can do this in a way that prevents unnecessary hardship and heartache. It's time to take accountability of our actions and emotions. It's time to stop being reactive to our emotions and our circumstances. We must be proactive in life and take charge of things to have better outcomes. So, to the teens having sex, stop. Boys, know that your worth is not in how many girls you can slay. So dads, don't tell them so. And girls, it's not how many boys you can lay that determines your value. Moms and dads, let them know. If you refuse to curtail your sexual activities, use protection. Stop being reckless about your activities. If you're listening and you're too young to bring a child in the world and too immature to raise one, it is evident by that very fact that you getting pregnant at such a young age means that you are not prepared to raise a child. The child is not anyone else's responsibility but your own. And if you're in school or in high school or college, you do not have the means or the time to focus on a child properly. Do you even know how to love yourself? Do you know how to give love? Do you have the time to? Do you have the provision to? Do not make the child a victim of your incapacity, immaturity, irresponsibility, and selfishness or impoverishment. I said selfishness because it was that selfish burning desire left untamed and untethered that led to that fleeting moment of self-satisfaction in having sex and making a baby in the first place. So stop being selfish and careless. There's an easy fix. Just say no. No to the desire, no to self. My next question. Why is premarital sex so acceptable now and so prevalent among even middle schoolers? Where and why and how did everything change? Some articles and studies attribute the fact that contraceptives are so widely available these days that the fear of pregnancy has decreased. But then I argue that because there's still too many babies being born to unwed couples, couples that were never couples, to young women and boys, young men that are unprepared and not wanting to have a baby. Am I making myself clear? I hope I'm not rambling. But so many people are having unwanted babies. And if contraception is so available, then why are so many women even having abortions? One article says it like this. In globalissues.org, a global survey was conducted a few years ago involving 40 countries covering 3/4 of the world's population. Found a minority, 46%, saying that sex between unmarried adults was morally unacceptable. That was a minority of 46%. However, a distinct split in attitudes concerning the acceptability of premarital sex was observed between developed and developing countries, meaning first world nations and nations moving into the second world. Among developed countries, minorities considered sex between unmarried adults to be morally unacceptable. That is, a minority of people felt sex between unmarried adults was okay. In France, Germany, and Spain, for example, less than 10% said that sex between unmarried adults is unacceptable, therefore showing a trend. And in Japan, Russia, and the United States, the proportions of those who said premarital sex is morally unacceptable was less than 1/3. The result? Premarital sex is okay. In contrast to the views in developed countries, large majorities in most developing countries like third and first world nations said that sex between unmarried adults is morally unacceptable. So does industrialization and modernization have an impact on our morals? It makes one think. Among those countries were some of the most populous countries, including China, 58%, Egypt, 90%, India, 67%, Indonesia, 97%, Nigerian, 77%, and Pakistan, 94%, with the Philippines at 71%. It's very interesting. The majorities were opposed to premarital sex. The interesting contradiction, though, is that in most of these undeveloped countries where premarital sex was frowned upon, sex trafficking was noted as being very prevalent. So premarital sex is unacceptable, but selling children for a family's survival is acceptable, knowing that more than likely they would be sold into a sex trafficking ring or be abused sexually. It's very sad. It is known that economic strife can lead to a child being vulnerable to traffickers and sexual abuse. In addition to social disapproval, though, as I continue, moral sensitivities and the desire for personal privacy, premarital sex is unlawful in a number of countries, including Iran, Morocco, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, and the Sudan. Now, most of these are Islamic nations. Even in traditional Asian societies such as China, India, Iran, and Japan, increasing numbers of young couples, especially in urban areas, are choosing to live together before deciding whether or not to marry. Now, I'm mentioning all of these factors because it seems very evident that modernization relates to more and more premarital or extramarital sexual activity, and hence the dysfunction and use of sex as a tool. Now, among the explanations for the rapid rise of cohabitation is that it allows individuals to assess compatibility with a partner while keeping future options open. The trend towards later marriage in many countries is another factor that has contributed to the rise in the prevalence of premarital sex. Delaying marriage to older ages also increases the temporal opportunities for premarital sex. Hence my question. If you have to test compatibility to determine if the person is marriage material, shouldn't you be refraining from making a baby? Should a baby be a part of the plan? Should accidents happen? Yes, in cohabitation, families are still being made during this so-called testing period. Doesn't that defeat the whole purpose? Making another human being is the most serious endeavor anyone could ever do. Making a human being, quote unquote, by accident is the most serious accident one could ever make. You are essentially responsible for bringing a new life into the world, a life that comes with a multitude of implications and necessities. In short, that life requires a hierarchy of needs, which I'll list under Maslow in a moment. But they include sustenance to survive, socialization, and love to thrive. That new life will have desires and comes with a destiny and a plethora of emotions. Now, Maslow's hierarchy of needs consists of 5 levels: psychological, physiological, safety, love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. The physiological involve having air, water, food, shelter, sleep, and clothing. That's the basics. Safety is next. One needs personal security, financial security, health and well-being, safety nets against accidents and illnesses. So I say, if a plan is not set in place, a mature, well-thought-out plan, and you yourself are unstable, how can that child have any sense of security at any level? The next of Maslow's hierarchy is love and belonging. This level involves emotional relationships and connections. Mind you, healthy ones, healthy friendships, intimacy, a healthy family, and healthy social groups. Therefore, if the house is not a home, if stress, conflict, lack, anger, addictions, and dysfunction create the environment, that baby will become a product of that dysfunction and that toxic atmosphere. The next level, esteem needs. After achieving love and belonging, individuals will undoubtedly strive for esteem, which encompasses self-esteem, respect, recognition from others, status, and prestige. Therefore, I say, if a parent does not know how to be loved, can it give good love? If the parent does not exhibit self respect or have self esteem, will not that be displaced upon their child? Their dysfunction will undoubtedly pour out into the life of that child or pour into the life of that child. And that child will have to fight to overcome all of the dysfunction and the negativity. So, who's the better teacher? Who will be that child's support? The next in the hierarchy and last is self actualization. This is the highest level where individuals seek personal growth and fulfillment, including realizing personal potential and self fulfillment. So I ask, will they get the encouragement and the nurturing that contributes to an individual's ability to find their way in the most healthiest of paths? Will they be provided the tools and the environment needed to believe in themselves and to conquer and to actually self-actualize? Maslow's theory suggests that individuals must satisfy lower-level needs before they can address higher-level needs. Although this progression can vary based on individual circumstances and cultural factors. Hint, hint, individual circumstances and cultural factors have an impact. So I say, while you and your sex partner are gratifying your psychosexual needs, or you and your experimental cohabitation partner are trying to figure each other out, the baby you make needs everything Maslow talks about. Can you provide it? And if you don't have it together, how can you possibly ensure that that sex baby, that accident, that experimental product of cohabitating will be nurtured throughout each stage so it can reach a point of self-actualization? Hear me. So I ask myself, while individuals are seemingly living in their own little worlds, managing their own families, and dealing with their sex partners at a micro level, there's also a big, big public problem that involves the most egregious of sexual violations that go beyond any level of morality, and that is sex trafficking. I have to go there because sex trafficking doesn't happen without a person being raised in a dysfunctional family with a psyche that has been damaged. I know none of us are perfect, but some of us are more predisposed to having psychosocial, mental, emotional problems than others. And many environments are worse than others. So I mention sex trafficking because it is most definitely a product of a dysfunctional home and a dysfunctional society. It was not my intention to really discuss it, but it's just a natural outcome of the discussion of the mismanagement, the abuse, and the misuse of sex in the world today. And we know of the most prevalent cases that is the most controversial in the world, and that is of abstain. And we're finding that that web of trafficking is global and among many classes of people. So as I continue this discussion of how sex is misused and abused, I cannot disclude this topic. It is the most hideous and prevalent form of human trafficking in the world, and the countries that frown upon premarital sex seem to be some of the greatest perpetrators of sex trafficking in the world. The National Library of Medicine's Public Medicine Central's article on sex traffickers says that globally, sexual exploitation, i.e., sex trafficking, is the most common form of human trafficking, representing 50% of the cases of trafficked individuals. While it is estimated that almost 5 million individuals, adults and children, are trafficked for the purposes of sexual exploitation internationally, it is expected that this number has recently increased due to higher levels of unemployment resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. Interesting, is it not? Further, the global prevalence of sex trafficking is likely underestimated given the lack of a standardized definition, in addition to various individualized experiences of victimization, non reporting due to fear of individuals who perpetrate trafficking or law enforcement, and systematic lack of central databases to track occurrences. My point here is not to provide an in depth study or analysis of sex trafficking, but to point out that sex is important. The desire for sex, in my humble opinion, can be worse than desire for money or the greed that drives it. I truly believe the desire for sex leads to more depravity and crime than people's need or greed for money. This may sound controversial, but I stand on it. On the website, thisversusthat.io, Money versus Sex article describes the difference between money and sex. I find it very interesting. It says money and sex are two of the most powerful forces in human society. Boom. Both have the ability to influence our behavior, shape our relationships, and impact our overall well-being. While they may seem like very different concepts, there are actually many similarities between the two. In this article, it will explore the attributes of money and sex and how they compare to each other. Physical versus emotional. One of the key differences, the article says, between money and sex is the way they are experienced. Sex is a physical act that involves intimate contact with another person. It can be a deeply emotional experience that creates a sense of connection and intimacy. Money, on the other hand, is a more abstract concept. It is a form of currency that represents value and can be used to acquire goods and services. While money can certainly have emotional significance, it is not inherently tied to physical sensations in the same way that sex is. And we've heard that money is the root of all evil, right? Well, now I'm adding a sex to that. Power dynamics. Both money and sex can involve power dynamics in relationships. In the case of money, those who have more of it often have more control and influence over others. This can lead to imbalances of power and potentially exploitative situations. Similarly, in the realm of sex, power dynamics can also come into play. Those who are more sexually desirable may have more influence in relationships and social interactions. This can create situations where one person holds more power than the other, leading to potential issues of consent and coercion. Hence, I say money and sex have the power to manipulate and abuse. Now, the article says value and worth. Money and sex are both tied to concepts of value and worth. In the case of money, it is a literal representation of value that can be used to acquire goods and services. Those who have more money are often seen as more valuable in society, as well as often equated with success and status. Sex, on the other hand, is tied to concepts of worth in a different way, but very importantly. Those who are seen as sexually desirable may be viewed as more valuable in terms of attractiveness and desirability. Hence, both money and sex can impact how individuals are perceived and valued by others. End of quote. So there you have it. Both money and sex are powerful. Both involve an exchange between one person and another, or one entity and another. But what about when both are used for the wrong reason? What about when sex is used to seek value from another person in order to have influence over another person? What about when money is used to buy a person, believing now that person belongs to and is owned by the provider, the moneymaker? There is an unhealthy demand and influence here. Money obligates, and sex can become an obligation. You want from me, so you must give me. It is a raping of the soul. So let's go back to sex trafficking. Why? Why is it so big? Why should it be discussed? Why is it growing so big, even in societies where premarital sex is pretty much acceptable and committed all over the globe? Answer me that. Why must a person be trafficked when you can get sex anywhere from anyone almost? It's a power thing. It's a dysfunctional thing. It's a spiritual, psychosocial, medical issue. It's a I want, so I must have thing. It's an I can manipulate, I can rule thing. It's an I want to use and abuse thing because I can thing. It's a need thing. It's an addiction thing. It's a dysfunction thing. As I said in the beginning of this podcast, there are signs of weakness that manifest in a person. And that is when the original intent of a thing becomes misused and abused, according to the mores of society as a whole. These are all signs of a mind that does not know how to navigate through life's challenges without checking out, acting out, or hiding out. The trafficking and the customer lack that connection to morality and the strength to fight for it. They don't see the person as a person. The source of their pleasure is an object. The means to satisfy those desires is an object and not another human being. This is the evidence of an individual that probably lacks self-esteem, self-respect, self-control, and has missed out somewhere along Maslow's hierarchy of needs, being deprived of a loving and stable home life free of abuse and neglect, and having a means of being able to thrive in a healthy environment. So why sex? Why is sex the tool to satisfy the lack? Why is sex the tool to fill the void? Well, sex is wanted. Sex is pleasurable. Sex is a means to connect. Sex can be used to dominate another person. Sex can be a tool to gain cooperation of another person. And sex can be used as a false sense of power over another person. So let's entertain a more global perspective on the sickness of sexual promiscuity, as expressed by the Union of International Associations, which is a proponent of global society and has been since the beginning of the 20th century. The UIA is an independent, not-for-profit research institution with a long-standing tradition that strives to promote international collaboration, peace, security, and sustainability through its documentation and networking activities. In its effort to discuss sex, it posts in its Encyclopedia of World Problems and Human Potential the misuse of sex and the disordered use of sex. It claims it must never be forgotten that the disordered use of sex tends progressively to destroy the person's capacity to love by making pleasure instead of sincere sex or sincere self-giving the end of sexuality, and by reducing other persons to objects of one's own gratification. In this way, the meaning of true love between a man and a woman, love always open to life, is weakened, as well as the family itself. Moreover, this subsequently leads to disdain for the human life which could be conceived, which in some situations is then regarded as an evil that threatens personal pleasure. Quote, the trivialization of sexuality is among the principal factors which have led to contempt for new life. Only A true love is able to protect life. And that is a quote from the Pontifical Council for the Family, The Truth and Meaning of Human Sexuality, 1995. DomesticShelter.org's article, 9 Ways Sexual Abuse Shows Up in Relationships, states, sexual abuse in relationships is often hidden and complex. It can take the form of coercion, painful or unwanted sex, strangulation, humiliation, or withholding intimacy, all tactics of control that erode safety and self-worth. Consent must freely be given, it states, and any sexual activity that involves pressure, fear, manipulation, or a disregard for a partner's health and boundaries is abuse, even if it doesn't look violent. In summation, in a world where freedom, industrialization, modernization, free thinking, and humanism are elevated, the world seems to be saying all things are allowed and I can do what I want. Hence, these 2 articles outline and make it clear that promiscuous sex, premarital sex, extramarital sex lead to the degradation of society. The UIA's article continues by stating that the world does not understand true progress. There is an inappropriate understanding of progress and an ambiguous nature of progress. It claims, since the 19th century, Western societies, and as a result, many others, have put their hopes in ceaselessly renewed and indefinite progress. They saw this progress as man's effort to free himself in face of the demands of nature and of social constraints. Progress was the condition for and the yardstick of human freedom. Progress, spread by the modern media of information and by the demand for wider knowledge and greater consumption, has become an omnipresent ideology. Yet, a doubt arises today regarding both its value and its result. What is the meaning of this never-ending, breathless pursuit of progress that always eludes one just when one believes one has conquered it sufficiently in order to enjoy it in peace? And I say, like, money is never enough? Like, there always has to be more? If it's not attained, the article says, it leaves one dissatisfied. Without doubt, there has been just condemnation of the limits and even the misdeeds of a merely quantitative economic growth. There is a desire to attain objectives of a qualitative order also. The quality and the truth of human relations, the degree of participation and responsibility are no less significant and important for the future of society than the quantity and variety of the goods produced and consumed. Overcoming the temptation to wish to measure everything in terms of efficiency and of trade and in terms of the interplay of forces and interests, man today wishes to replace these quantitative criteria with the intensity of communication, the spread of knowledge and culture, mutual service, and a combining of efforts for a common task. Is not genuine progress to be found in the development of moral consciousness, it says, which will lead man to exercise a wider solidarity and to open himself freely to others and to God? For a Christian, progress necessarily comes up against the eschatological mystery of death. The death of Christ and his resurrection and the outpouring of the Spirit of the Lord help man to place his freedom in creativity and gratitude within the context of the truth of all progress and the only hope which does not deceive. And that quote comes from the papal writings of May 14, 1971. And I say it is not outdated because the love of Christ and the truth of Christ and the purpose of God does not deceive and does not deplete and does not degrade. So in closing, I say true love must be expressed one for another, no matter the cost. True love must be a commodity, never relinquished. True love must be known and valued. True love must be cherished at all costs and prioritized. And true love must be the first priority. True love must be expressed sexually in a holy union, in a marital union, in a stable union where love, real love, can be expressed in a healthy fashion. And true love is God's love. So anyone that misuses sex and abuses sex inside of marriage or outside of marriage, that does not understand the implication of the damage sex can have on another, needs to look at the love of God, needs to consider the truth of Christ and the purpose of marriage. Premarital sex does damage to relationship. Premarital sex and abuse of sex, or the misuse of sex, disordered sex, unravels God's order and empowers evil. It gives evil a place and a position that it was not meant to have. So we must take heed. The spiritual and emotional implications of disordered sex are tremendous and run deep. The negative impacts run far beyond our natural imaginations and are very long lasting. So again, we need to take heed. Perhaps in the next episode, I will go more in depth on such implications and the long lasting impact disordered sex has on us. But for now, consider your own intimate relationships and your own sexual behavior. Consider the implications that your actions have on your relationships, on your emotionality and mentality. Again, do some introspection and self-analysis about who you are with, why you are with, and what you are doing, and what you have done and why. Consider how you may be contributing to your own or someone else's demise by not valuing the true beauty and power in allowing God to take the lead in this most precious and holy part of life, and that's sexual intimacy with your mate. Be aware that there are unseen dangers connected to disordered sex. Remember, every action and decision has a reaction and an outcome, and all of them are not just natural, but may very well be spiritual. There is a domino effect, and that effect very well arises in other areas of one's life where they are least expected to arise, and more than likely are unrecognizable as to why certain things are happening and why certain things are affecting one's life, and therefore thus become incapable of being stopped or corrected. Consider that. Until next time, be blessed, be at peace, be connected to self, be connected to Him, and be in love. For true love is God, for He is truth and He is love. Truth drips.
I've been running for so long through the valleys where shadows stay. My heart grew cold, my spirit weak, but deep inside I heard you